Hello and welcome back to Coding with T. Today's tutorial is going to be very informative because today we're going to learn state management, which is a core feature when we are going to talk about the Flutter app development. And inside the state management, we are going to cover the GetX. So first of all, what is state management or why do even we need state management? If we talk about the Flutter, you can see Flutter is focusing on widgets. Either they are stateless widgets or the stateful widgets. This means that state is involved if it is a static state or a dynamic state. So to manage that state, we are going to use the state management libraries. State management is basically a crucial part of Flutter development, which is going to allow the developers to manage and update application state efficiently. Let's say if we are not going to use a state management and we are going to focus on stateless and stateful widgets provided by the Flutter, what is going to be happen? We will start coding backends and front ends in the same application, in the same screen. While doing so, if we say that our application consists of only 4 to 5 screens, then that might be a manageable application and that can be done using simple stateless stateful widget. Although Flutter is powerful, Flutter is very fast, and on top of it, while creating a large applications, handling the data in single screen without focusing on decoupling, we might not be able to create or manage large applications. So what it leads to be a challenging code, a potential bugs, performance issues, and when things are getting complicated, we might not be able to even manage our application. So that's why we're going to use a state management. So for today's tutorial, we are going to focus on the GetX state management for Flutter. Okay, so what is GetX? GetX is a lightweight yet powerful state management library. Because Flutter is fast, Flutter is very efficient in developing applications. So to manage that, we need a light and a powerful state management. And also Flutter is not just simply state management, but it has more features that we might not be able to use or to access while using any other state management. Like so, it has a route management, which is again a very powerful thing. It has a dependency management. We can use internationalization to create multilingual application. We can use the themes, locals, and definitely it is going to allow us to create or use all these operations without using context, without passing the context from design to backend to controllers and all this stuff. So that is a very plus point of using this GetX. So GetX has three main pillars. The first one is the state management, second one is the route management, and third one is the dependency management. The first one is obvious. We usually call the GetX as a state management, but you can see it has a three main pillars: route management and dependency management as well. So after that, it has utils or the utilizations other than these three pillars, which is internationalization of the languages, changing theme, and a bunch of other things that I am going to not cover in this tutorial because it is just an overview tutorial of the GetX, so that we have a basic knowledge before going to use this GetX inside our e-commerce admin panel. So the first one is the state management. Inside the GetX, we can manage the states in two ways. The first one is a simple state management, which is as simple as using a stateful widget or calling set state. So the simple state management is called, or we can use it using get builder, right? And the other one is reactive state management. Reactive state management is a tricky part. If we talk about the block state management, or if you are familiar with using streams in Flutter, this is something called the reactive state management using streams. So whenever there is a change in any type of variable, we can easily update that without doing anything throughout our application in all the screens. So let's first talk about the first one, which is the simple state manager. What is a simple state manager? It is basically extremely light and easy to use. We can use this simple state manager. As you can see, we have a class which is a controller class which extends with the GetX controller, and inside this class we have created a simple variable, and inside we have a simple function which is going to increment that counter variable. Now in the design, we are going to update the design using the get builder. We first initialize the controller. You can see we call this init method and we initialize the controller, and after that we have a builder method that is going to build the design or update the design whenever there is change inside that controller. How that controller is going to be triggered? Whenever inside this increment method you can see update function, that update function is going to update our UI only inside this controller. So this is how we can use the get builder. If we talk about the reactive state management is a bit of difficult if we talk about in other state managements, but when we are going to talk about the GetX, it is quite simple because we don't need to use stream controllers. We're not going to use any stream builder to create a single variable or use a stream builder for each variable. That is again going to be a large code. We are not going to again create a class for each state as we do in the block. We have to manage states in different classes and bunch of other things that we are not going to use inside. So again, using the reactive state management with the GetX is simple as by calling a set state. So let's imagine that we have a name variable, a simple variable, a name variable, and we initialize some name to it. Let's say whenever there is change inside this name variable, whenever we're going to change the name, we want to update the name throughout in our application, not just in one screen. And also this name is not dependent on any controller as it does in the previous simple get builder, right? So we want to update the name throughout in our application wherever we are using this name. So how we can do that? We are going to just add this dot obs next to the name variable, and that's it. Now this variable is observable. This means that now this variable can be observed throughout our application by some widget, and that widget is going to redraw itself whenever there is change inside this name variable. So how we are going to declare that in the UI? We're going to create this OBX widget, which is the observer widget, which is going to observe OBS widget, which is declared inside these as a function. And this function is going to return a widget. You can see we're returning a text widget from this OBX. This means that we can easily use this inside our design. And in this text widget, we are calling controller.name. This means that whatever the controller is, we are going to call this name. Name should be the OBS, which is observable and is being observed by the OBX. So whenever there is change inside this name, doesn't matter it's in the current UI or it's in the any screen, it is going to update this name variable. Now again, we have two ways to manage our reactive state inside Flutter. The first one is the GetX. The second one is the OBX. The above example was the OBX widget, which is the observer widget, which is a very simple and very useful. But also we have another one, which is GetX. Let's say we have two variables, count 1, count 2, and then we have a sum, which is going to sum these two values. And we're using the GetX. Again, it is going to use the controller and a builder. So whenever you can see I'm returning again a widget, which is a text widget, and we are using the OBS value, which is the count1 dot value. So whenever there is change inside the count1, that change is also going to be triggered in the sum. So we can use this reactive state management with the controller as well using the GetX. And if we talk about the OBX widget, which is we just have to call, we don't need to create or call any controllers. We are not going to create any builders, but a simple one single line which is going to update any of the widgets. So we're going to definitely perform or use these operations inside our e-commerce admin panel. So don't worry about these examples. Then we can declare these variables in different ways. The first one is using the rx with the type. So you can see we have rx string, rx bool, rx int, and the list is going on. And the second type is we can declare these in the dart generics, or you can say the angular brackets. We have to first write the rx, then we have to define the type. By using this type, we can easily declare our own classes as the OBS class. Down below, you can see we have a user, which is a user class or a custom user class, but we make that as observable. Instead of writing .obs, we are writing rx, and in the brackets, we are passing our class. This means that we can easily convert any class into observable class, and whenever there is change inside that class, we will be easily able to trigger that change inside the UI. But remember, we are not going to, this obx or getx are not going to change anything in the UI if we are updating the values inside this class, which are not observable. So the variables like int, string, or any function is being updated inside this user class will not trigger the updation of the UI. Instead, we have to call update method, or by using, you can see we have a user instance. So we have to write user dot refresh, or we have to call the update so that we can redraw the design in the UI wherever we are using this class. And third, or the more preferred approach, is to use .obs. Simply create your variable like you do usually, and then you have to just write obs next to it. And same while declaring a class, you can see we have a user class. We create its instance. .obs is going to make that class as observable. There is definitely more in the state management, and I am going to create a complete course on GetX on each of these topics because they can be covered in a separate tutorials. But for now, let's jump towards the second main pillar of GetX, which is the route management. As by name, you can think of that it is going to manage the routes between screens and from two screens, as well as it provides us to handle the snack bars, dialogues, bottom sheets without using the context. And while using this route management, the first and foremost thing is that we must have to write or change this material app to get material app. So route management has two major ways. The first one is using a navigation without named routes, and the second one is using with named routes. So you might be familiar while developing your applications, apps, we usually use navigation without named routes. So what it is, you can see we are going to call a next screen using get.to. So I'm not talking about how stateless and stateful widgets call, or how usually we call the Flutter using navigator.push and pass the context and a lot of other things, maybe 10 lines of code. But using getx, we can simply call get.to to push towards the new screen. So definitely it is going to work. We can use this to move from one screen to other screen, and it is not going to delete the instance of the previous screen, so it will be stacked on top of it. So when we're going to press the back button from the next screen, will be head towards the previous screen because previous screen is not removed. And to go towards the previous screen, we just have to call the get.back, which is going to lead us towards the previous screen, and it is going to remove the already screen which is visible. We can use this for the dialogues, bottom sheets, snack bars to be closed. Then let's say if we want to move toward the next screen, but we want to remove the current screen which is being displayed, so we can call the get.off. This is going to remove the current screen and jump towards the next screen. And whenever user is going to head towards the back, or press the back button, or use the get.back to reach to the previous screen, the user will not be able to find that screen which is closed. Then we again have another method which is get.offAll, which is going to remove all the previous screens and will display or show us which is the next screen. Let's say we want to move toward the next screen and we are expecting that screen to return some data after performing some action. We can also do that using getx with a very simple one line, which is we just have to write the await sign, then we have to pass the get.to and call the next screen, which is the payment screen in this case. And we are, you can see over here, we are waiting in this case to receive some data. And from the payment screen, how we can return the data, we just have to call the get.back, and as a result we are, let's say, passing a success. That success will be received inside this data, and that's how easily we can pass the data or wait for the data to arrive from the next call screen. So that's it. We most of the time we're using the without named routes inside our app development. Okay, the next thing is navigation with named routes. In this, we are going to not use the to method, or we're not going to call the screen name. Instead, we're going to pass a string, and we have to declare that string. What does that string actually means, and which screen now get should take us to. So to call the next screen, we just have to write get.toNamed, and inside the string we are going to pass that string. And let's say if we were going to use the off named, means that we want to remove this previous screen, we have to use off named. Again, to remove all the previous screens, we are going to use of all named. And how we are going to declare it? Again, we have to use the get material app first, and inside, if you have any initial route in mind, you can declare that initial route. And you can see inside the get pages, we first have to declare the name, which is string, by which we are going to call the get.off named, get.toNamed. So this will be the same string as we are calling, and where it is going to take us to this page, which is my home page. Then for the second one, it is going to call profile and is going to take us to my profile. So whenever we're going to call this profile, it is going to take us to my profile, right? But let's say you want to use different profiles. You want to use the same profile name, but whenever there is some user or some value is passed, you can also do that with GetX. The first one is without arguments. The second one is the with arguments. You just have to write / at the end of the first one, and in the second one you can pass any parameters. So these both will work accordingly, and it is going to, first one is going to return or redirect to my profile, and second one will return to user profile. So this is how we are going to declare of each of these named routes. Let's say we want to send some data in the URL. How we can do that? We have to call get.toNamed /profile/ name that or the data that we want to pass in that route. Also, we want to display this path inside our URL, and definitely we're going to receive or retrieve that data in the next screen. We're going to call the get.parameters, and inside we're going to pass the user. In that user, what we're going to get, we're going to get the data that we passed, which is 3494. Or let's say you want to pass the multiple data, multiple parameters. In that case, you have to call the get.toNamed, get.offNamed, or whatever you want to use. Call the profile, pass the data, and then again by adding a question mark, you can add different variables, which is flag true and country Italy. How are we going to retrieve this? We have to call or get the parameters with the flag as true, country as this one, get.toNamed. We can pass the parameters. Now to receive all this data, we have to get the get.parameters of user, get.parameters of flag, get.parameters of country. So this user is going to return the data of this 3495. Then the flag is going to return us as true, country as Italy. So this is how we manage the routes in Flutter. So we're going to definitely practice each of these topics inside our e-commerce admin panel. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about is the dependency management, which is the third pillar of GetX. Dependency management is handling the creation of instances of different classes. So why are we going to use the dependency management of GetX? Let's say we want to create a simple instance, which is final name is equal to my class. This is going to definitely create a simple instance. But let's say we want to use the same class instance, or we want to use this class deep down inside our application. Then in a simple static approach, we have to pass the data along all the controllers until where we need that data, right? So that's definitely a very bad approach. So to avoid that and to use a best approach, which is using GetX, the dependency management, create an instance inside the Flutter. We simply call get.put. So what this get.put is going to do, it is going to create the instance. To create an instance, we are going to call any controller. Name of the controller is equal to get.put and then controller. So this is going to create an instance of this controller, not inside the class which we are calling, but rather it is going to create that instance inside the get instance, so that we can use this same instance throughout our application. So easily we can call the get.put, and to declare the get.put, we have these three things: get.put, name of the class, and some class. We can pass the tags as permanent to true, add some tag. Let's say you want to use this same instance or the same class with multiple instances. Let's say we have a teacher class. We want to use that teacher class as directors, teachers, and some other things, but the class is same. To create multiple instances, we can use the tag property. We have to call the get.put, create the instance, and call the tag. By that unique tag, you will be able to identify or get the instance anywhere in your application. So you just have to create the instance at first using get.put. This means that you are going to create and place the instance inside the get, and then that instance will be available throughout your application. And these are some of the attributes or some of the options that you can use while calling the get.put. Again, these are the details that we can talk about in detail in a separate course. So next thing is, again, we can call a get.lazyput, because while creating the instances, we might not be using that instance at that time, but for the later times. So get.lazyput is going to create that instance only when it is going to be called, but get.put is going to create the instance right away. So this is a small difference between these two. Again, we will get towards the details later on. So using the instances How are we going to find the instance later on inside our application? Let's say we call the get.put right in the dashboard, but now we want to use that in the user management somewhere. So we just have to write the get.find and the name of the controller like this. Or you can simply write get.find, return type should be that controller, and getx is going to find that instance. Even if we have a millions of instances, getx is going to find that instance for us. You just have to declare the name like this way or this way. getx will find that instance, and by that, once you have the instance, this means that you have a complete class. You can use it or you can do anything with that as simple as a normal class. So these are the three pillars of getx, and here are some of the additional things in the getx, like internationalization. For the translation, we have to create a map or a list of strings. You can call it keys, and inside you have to just declare the language, which is USA language, which is some other language. You just have to pass the same variables, and for each same variable or each same key, this is a key, this is a value. So each key, this key should be same throughout these languages, and against each key you have to provide what you want to display when this key or when this language will be selected, right? Once you have that translations created, you just have to, while using that, you just have to append your text with the tr. Inside this text widget, I'm using the title .tr. So this tr will automatically detect the currently selected language and convert this title to that specific language. And how we are going to declare that, or how we are going to select the current selected language? Inside the get material app, you can see we first have to pass all the translations as messages. So messages is the translation that we just created. What will be the current selected locale, which is the locale of E and US. This means that this will be the language that we are using from these all defined languages. Then what will be the fallback locale, means that what if it is not going to work or we find something invalid, then this will be as an alternative will be used. So to change or update your locale, you just have to call the get.update locale and pass your any language that we want to select. Now to use the device selected locale inside the get material app, you just have to call the get.device locale, which is going to return us the device selected language. So this is how simple we can use internationalization easily inside our Flutter apps using getx. And also you can change your themes, deal with the themes using getx. You again have to use the get material app, and inside to change the theme, you just have to call get.change theme and pass the theme data.light or theme data.dark, and that's it. So these are the basics of getx state management. Definitely we're going to practice each one of those, and those will be practiced inside our e-commerce admin panel. We also focus these on the e-commerce app that we have just created. You can watch or get the links to both of them inside the description below to watch the complete course, to watch all the exception related videos, all error related videos, some UI videos, and bunch of other premium content. You can get the link down below in the description. So thank you for watching.